I once had a very close friend. She was not of my generation. She was born in 1912. Nor was she of my faith. She was Jewish, and I was obviously a Catholic priest. But our friendship and devotion to each other was very deep, and for years I dined at her home almost every week. Jane was a mother, the mother of my friend Ellen. She was also a prolific author, and I delighted in reading her books and articles. A woman with a very open mind, a wealth of experience, and an indomitable spirit, she poured her soul into her writing. Her published books were long out of print, but I set about to collecting all of them. I was determined to own all of Jane's books. Now, these were the days before the internet had made such searches considerably easier, taking most of the fun out of the hunting. I was forced to do what I loved to do: search every corner of every used bookstore I could find. It took me years, but sure enough, one by one, I found a used copy of all her books. Every time I located another one, I would take it to her, and she would sign it with a loving inscription to me. With the passing of the years, however, her health declined considerably. She never lost her wonderful spirit, and her delightful smile and twinkle in her eyes remained just as enchanting as ever, no matter how much pain she was in. But her strength was being quickly drained, and she was becoming extremely crippled up with arthritis, to the point where she could no longer walk or even hold a fork in her hand. The first books she inscribed to me in a beautiful penmanship, but the later signatures were becoming more and more illegible. It was very painful for her to hold a pen, and she could no longer control the movements of her hand, even to sign her name. Eventually, I had collected almost all her works, and there was only one book left for me to find. I searched high and low for a copy of it, and it seemed none existed anywhere. I began to despair of ever completing my collection of Jane's works, when finally one day I discovered the book on the last shelf of a cluttered old used bookstore in another state. The owner of the shop just smiled knowingly when he heard my squeal of uncontrolled delight. He was quite familiar with the fanatical eccentricities of bibliophiles. Needless to say, I couldn't wait to tell Jane the good news and ask her to sign this one last book for me. She was as delighted as I was, but it was a day of particularly intense pain for her, and so she asked me to leave the book with her, and she would sign it the next day, just as soon as she had a moment of better coordination in her hands and could hold a pen. I left it there, and the next week when I returned for supper, she apologized and said that she was still waiting for the right moment when her hand would be strong enough to write. It was the same the following week and the week after. For months I waited. She picked up the book daily and tried, but it was no use. She soaked her hands in hot water, had them massaged, tried ointments and creams and bandages, but the strength, the control never returned. She was only able to hold the book awkwardly and caress it with her hand. And this she did many times a day, hoping in vain to be able to write one more time in her life just these few last words. One day I received the inevitable call. My friend had died, It was her wish that I, the Catholic priest, should conduct the memorial for her, my Jewish friend. After the service, her family presented me with a few precious things of hers that she had set aside for me. Among these was the book I had left with her so long ago. I opened it to the title page, looking for her writing, her last signature, but knowing full well I would find it blank. Disappointed and very sad, I placed it on my shelf next to her other books. This was the only one that was not signed, and now never could be. The only one without some written words of affection addressed to me. In my mind, my collection would be forever incomplete. As time passed, however, more and more I began to pick up that book. Somehow I picked it up more than any of the others. I seemed to be drawn to it by some invisible force, and I loved it more than the others. What had always attracted me to signed books, any signed books, was knowing that the author had once held this very copy, and I could somehow feel the presence, the soul of the writer. A signed book is a lingering spiritual presence, an echo of a person who is no longer around, a bridge from one soul to another. I know that's foolish, irrational, but so be it. Now this book was different. It had never been signed, never inscribed. Yet the author had held it in her hands far more than all the others, had put all her concentration into it. It contained her pain, her desire to communicate, her frustration, her tears, her love. And I could feel all of that intensely. More of her is in this unsigned book than in all the books she succeeded in signing. It brings my friend back to me every time I hold it. There are so many things in life that link us invisibly, inexplicably, irrationally, but very really to another soul who is to our eyes no longer here. Who can explain the sudden worry a mother feels when she instinctively knows that her child is in pain or in trouble, even on the other side of the world? Who can pinpoint what it is that fills our heart when we hold in our hands something given us long ago by our mother? With our mind, we know she is not here. But with our heart, we know for certain that she is. And we can sense that presence, that powerful link in the things she has touched. There is power in a mother's touch, a power that transcends all time and space, a power that is stronger than separation and death, a power that is intimately connected to the power and love that we call God. Separation can be a painful thing until our eyes are opened to this mystery. Ascension is a celebration of separation, bringing home a wonderful truth. That separation is an illusion. That union with God does not end our beautiful union with others, but strengthens it, moves it to a new and marvelous level. We do not lose anyone to God. It is only in God that we truly find one another for the first time. God and mothers leave us so many precious signs of their abiding presence. Some are signed boldly and bear the unmistakable mark of the author's hand, God's hand, the mother's hand. Others are more hidden, the signature not so clear, written perhaps not in ink, but in tears or blood or love. And often it is these unsigned treasures that, once discovered, prove the most powerful links between mother and child, between soul and God, between earth and heaven. Let us embrace the mystery, recognize in every parting the ascension rather than the separation. Open our eyes to the unbroken connection and feel the awesome power in the unsigned gifts of God.